Have you seen ads on TikTok or Instagram about weird things like mushroom coffee or mushrooms for bloating? Or did you watch the Netflix documentary, Fantastic Fungi? You might have seen fungi pop everywhere. And some people say we're in the middle of a massive shroom boom. And that makes a lot of sense. Mushrooms can help with a lot of issues we face today, be that stress or anxiety or cognitive function and sleep and bloating. So they can be a support for a lot of the issues we face, which makes sense why they're popular. But they're also very new. And I think a lot of people, including people who promote them, are very mushroom illiterate. And that makes sense because America has been a follower, not a leader in mushrooms for many, many decades, if not hundreds of years. And for that reason, there's a lot of misinformation and also confusion on what mushrooms are for. And in this video, I want to break down the top mushrooms for human health and why they are good for you and why you should take them and when you should take them. The good news is that you can make this really simple for you. So for example, if you think of mushrooms and you think of going to the forest and picking them up, that can be really scary at first. And that's understandable. Mushrooms or fungi are very diverse. It's estimated that there's 6 times the amount of fungal species in the world than there are plant species. And that also means that if an expert forager will go in the forest to pick up mushrooms, they will not know every mushroom. They not probably even know half of the mushrooms they find unless they take them back to the lab and identify them under a microscope or through a spore print. And there's a lot of these little brown mushrooms, nobody knows what they are. So how would you, as a newbie maybe or intermediate person to this space, figure out what mushrooms should you take and how to recognize them? And that's very confusing. But the good news is it's fairly simple. You really don't need to know mushroom number 50, 40, 30. You don't even need to know the top 10. Just figuring out the top 3 or top 5 mushrooms will get you really far. And in this video, I want to share with you what those 5 are, and I try to rank them from the 5 to the 1 on where you start. Before we get into those 5 mushrooms, I do want to give few really important details about mushrooms or fungi, because I think these things will help you navigate them as you learn more. First of all, they are not plants. They are not some just vegetable that you put on pizza and pasta, but they're their own kingdom. This is both good and bad. This means there's huge diversity within them, but the good news is also that they are very unique. They offer a lot of health benefits that we couldn't get from vegetables alone. The second thing is that we share as animals tons of ancestry with fungi. We actually share up to 50% of our DNA with mushrooms. And we used to have common ancestors long time ago. This means also good and bad. It means that we're very prone to fungal diseases. So fungi, let's say in the case of molds or like candida, affects us really bad. It's hard to get rid of fungal diseases. They're really sticky, for lack of a better term. The good news is we're also very perceptible to fungal medicine. Roughly half of the best-selling drugs in the world utilize fungi, and there are a lot of the blockbuster drugs. Penicillin is the one often referred, but a lot of immunosuppressants, billion-dollar drugs, are based out of fungi. The third thing I would like to say is that if you choose to ingest these healthy mushrooms, often referred as medicinal mushrooms or functional mushrooms, they will be part of your body, you like it or not. So our gut has a lot of bacteria, but what people don't realize is that usually where you find bacteria, you find fungi, and where you like fungi, you find bacteria. They kind of go together. Those are the two kind of overlooked and sometimes invisible kingdoms that get overshadowed by plants and animals. And bacteria and fungi can be found in our gut, in our skin. You might have heard of microbiome, but there's a concept called mycobiome, which means that even if you like it or not, there will be fungi growing on your skin and your gut. And particularly the gut aspect will impact through the vagus nerve, our thoughts, feelings, brain, chemistry, but also our digestion. So they play a critical role or not, and you will either have good fungi or bad fungi in your body. So now we know that mushrooms are very unique. They can be very powerful or hurt us a lot, and we know that they're part of our life, we want it or not. So how can you ingest some of the good stuff in your body? And I want to get into the top 5 functional mushrooms for health. Now, none of these are psychedelic, and that's the difference really between culinary, functional, and psychedelic mushrooms. Culinary mushrooms like, let's say, chanterelles, boletes, they're delicious and they have some nutrients. That could be fibers, minerals, some even antioxidants. So they're good for you. They're not particularly like a superfood, but they're good to ingest and they taste delicious. On the other hand, psychedelic mushrooms are very powerful and they are incredibly effective. And there's a lot of research coming on it. I can make separate videos on that if you want. So just comment below if you're interested in the latest and greatest research on psychedelics. But they're also illegal and they will have a psychoactive response. And these functional mushrooms are somewhere in the middle where they don't give you a psychoactive response, but they're very effective. So they're more effective than the culinary mushrooms, but they're not immediately effective, similar to psychedelics. But they offer a lot of health benefits and they're very well proven. You can think of them like CBD to THC, except they have a lot more research and a lot more efficacies than CBD. So number 5 mushroom is turkey tail, Trametis versicolor. It's actually one of the easiest mushrooms to ever forage. So if you go to the forest and look at decaying trees falling on the ground, you'll probably see this colorful mushroom pretty much anywhere around the world. There is a false turkey tail version too, but that's not dangerous, so we can ignore that fact. Turkey tail has been used for hundreds of years, particularly in China in the Ming Dynasty for health and wellness. But what made it really famous in the West is in the 1965, an employee in the Keiha Corporation, which is a chemical company in Japan, this employee had a neighbor who had a cancer, and he started giving turkey tail to this person. And in just a few matter of weeks, this person with cancer got healed. So the company isolated a compound out of turkey tail, PSK, that K is for Keiha, and later another compound in Japan called PSP, this polysaccharide from turkey tail, was extracted. And together, these have been some of the most popular breast cancer drugs in Japan. After the discoveries in Japan, turkey tail is pretty widely studied. And there's, for example, a meta-analysis of 13 gold standard studies around the effects of turkey tail, and particularly its effects for immunity. What's also interesting, I think, about turkey tail is that it has huge support for gut health. We talked about how fungi live in our gut no matter what, and there's good mushrooms and bad mushrooms. And in this case, the turkey tail really supports with the microbiome of your body, and it's an amazing gut healer and a support for things that we usually worry about when we have issues. We don't worry about our immunity and we don't worry about our gut until something is wrong. And for that reason, turkey tail is amazing. The number 4 mushroom you should know about is cordyceps mushroom. Yes, the mushroom in the HBO show. This is actually a really safe and effective mushroom for health, and it's very unique compared to the other mushrooms. Now, you might have noticed that I use fungi and mushrooms interchangeably, but they're actually quite different. So when we talk about fungi, we talk about the whole kingdom. So think of the kingdom of plants. But when we talk about the mushroom, we're technically talking about the fruiting body, the reproductive organism of fungi. So fungi has these seeds called spores, and they land somewhere. And when the conditions are perfect, it starts to create these small little lines called hyphae, and this hyphae eventually becomes mycelium. Mycelium tends to be underground, sometimes inside of trees, and it's like the tree trunk creating a fruit, and the fruit, let's say an apple, that is the fruiting body. So when the fungi runs out of nutrients or finds kind of maturity, it musters all of its life force to create a reproductive organ that shoots spores into the sky. Now, it's quite a bit more complicated than that, but for simple words, most of these things that we eat are almost always mushrooms or fruiting bodies. So if you think of a deer in the woods or rabbit eating a fungi, it is the fruiting body. It's not the mycelium underground. It's hard to access. If you think of our ancestors eating these, they ate the mushroom. So this fruiting body is the part that you would consume, be it our ancestors or animals or psilocybin, whatever it may be. It's just like we eat the apple, we don't try to eat the apple tree bark. But cordyceps is one of these weird exceptions. Even though we do eat the fruiting body, it grows very differently than almost any other mushroom. It's a parasitic mushroom. It grows on animals. And for this reason, it's had a lot of myth and lore to it. It was said to be discovered in the Himalayas when the Sherpas, the people that now take people to the top of Mount Everest, for example, were hiking up, and they use a large local mammal there called a yak. this kind of a bull ox-like character that will carry bags and stuff up the mountains. And they were really tired because of altitude and a lot of hard work. And they started grazing on these cordyceps mushrooms and suddenly had tons of energy and got all horny. So because of these horny ox, the Sherpas were set to start consuming them themselves. This then led to the royals and emperors finding about it, and it became this thing. It's really hard to get because it grows in this high altitude on insects, and therefore its weight is similar to like the cost of it per weight was similar to like silver. Today, pretty much every cordyceps you can buy anywhere in the world, with a few notable exceptions, is not really a wild cordyceps. Wild cordyceps is like this is hundreds or thousands of dollars each, but instead they're grown either in laboratories or they're grown in like a farmed way without use of insects. But because of this unique growing method, cordyceps has a life force and energies and properties you don't normally find in, definitely not plants, but also in fungi. And besides these polysaccharides similar to, let's say, turkey tail that support immunity and gut health, it has very unique properties. And there are studies, for example, on how cordyceps increase your VO2 max of untrained individuals up to 15%. And I've seen this with trained Olympic level athletes, professional endurance athletes having 5, 6, 7% VO2 max increases, which are insane. And by having more oxygen in your lungs, you'll perform better, have more energy. There's also interesting studies about ATP production. ATP is like a factory within a cell. So think of your body created by millions and billions of cells, and these cells all have an energy factory. And in this mitochondria, the ATP production is one way how efficiently or inefficiently energy is produced, and cordyceps is shown to increase that by up to 50%. Now that sounds pretty wild, but a lot of people who've taken high doses of cordyceps extract have noticed instant spurts of energy without the need of sugar and caffeine. So cordyceps is amazing for lungs, adrenals, energy production, and sports. But cordyceps works similar to creatine, is that even though you can get noticeable results pretty quickly, it builds up in your system. So you usually load it up. If you, let's say you run a marathon or race, you load it up in the first week or two before the race, and it will stay in your system even after race when you stop taking it. The third mushroom you should know is lion's mane. And actually, you don't really have to worry about cordyceps and turkey tail even. I would say if you just want to start simple, you start with the top 3, but this would be the first mushroom you really want to know, lion's mane. When I started actively working on selling and educating people about mushrooms about 12 years ago, nobody really focused on lion's mane. I actually talked to supposedly the largest mushroom producer in the world at that time, and they only did one batch, a growing batch of lion's mane at that point. It was not on everybody's radar. People were much more interested in other mushrooms like shiitake, maitake, meshima even was probably more popular at that point. Fast forward to today, lion's mane might be the most popular mushroom in the US. I'm pretty sure it is. It's taken US by storm, both in coffees and coffee substitute, or generally for cognitive health. And people are aware of its abilities to help with memory, creativity, and also long-term brain health. Now, unlike, let's say, cordyceps, which is very unique and offers very unique properties for energy and sports performance, but there are many items you can take for sports performance. They might not work exactly like cordyceps, but they still offer somewhat similar benefits. But there isn't really any, if I can honestly think of any natural products that can do what lion's mane does. Lion's mane has 2 unique compounds that are able, one of them is able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier, which is very hard. Basically, your body's divided into, overly simplistically, 2 parts, your brain and your rest of your body. And this blood-brain barrier protects things from going into the brain, which is very helpful to prevent toxins entering the brain and therefore you getting really, really sick. But it can also slow down from nutrients entering the brain. So only some things like glucose and bad things like heroin can easily enter the brain. And in this case, lion's mane has a compound that's able to penetrate it, and another one that can then, in the brain, help protect and repair nerve growth factories and these myelin sheets particularly. Without getting too technical, there are very interesting human studies of people with mild cognitive impairment taking this mushroom, and it's a gold standard study with a control group and a placebo. And over 16 weeks, the group that took the lion's mane got smarter and had better memory every week. And then after 16 weeks and they stopped taking it, every following week their memory started declining. So this kind of a study really proves the powers of lion's mane for also short-term memory, but there's a lot of studies again on mild cognitive impairment on people. Now, what makes lion's mane amazing, that it's also delicious. So it's easy to put into products like coffee without sacrificing the flavor, which really helps. And the other thing is just the general stressors of modern day life. People are looking for an edge, and a lot of people don't want to take things like, let's say, Adderall or smart drugs like modafinil, and are looking for natural alternatives, which don't work as well, truth be told, but you still want them to work. And for that reason, lion's mane is a safe, excellent choice for cognitive support on a daily basis. If you only know 2 mushrooms, one of the 2 should be chaga. It's also touted as the king of mushrooms. It's also a very unique mushroom. It grows often 10-20 years in birch trees in the northern hemisphere, from Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia, Canada, Alaska, and some other northern states in the US. And over those 10-20 years, growing in very harsh cold climates, it collects its life force and powers into this conch, sclerotium. People argue what actually it is, and people can't agree if it's mycelium or fruiting body. It's a whole debate, but whatever it is, it's powerful. In my native country, chaga has been a sacred medicine for a long time. So long that it's actually mentioned in the very first Finnish book ever written, called Seven Brothers by Aleksis Kivi. So first book ever written in Finnish, the brothers mentioned taking chaga to heal their bodies. It became famous in the West by a Russian Nobel laureate author, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, in the book Cancer Ward, where again, the character in the book used chaga to heal himself from cancer. Some people say this book was about the author himself. Whatever it may be, it became more commonly studied in the West in the last 50-60 years. Particularly Dr. Kirsti Kahlos in the University of Helsinki post-war has studied extensively on the health benefits of chaga and found out that to be arguably the most antioxidant-rich food in the world. A good quality of double extracted chaga can equal to like 30 pounds of carrots in antioxidants. But maybe more important than how much antioxidants there is, what kind of antioxidants chaga contains. It is the highest source of melanin. You might have heard this is a kind of pigment related to our skin, but it's a powerful antioxidant. And then another one called SOD, superoxidase dismutase, which is arguably the most powerful antioxidant there is. And these antioxidants can serve a lot of benefits, from skin and longevity, also to gut and immunity. Now, antioxidants are one of those things that you hear a lot in marketing, but there's also a lot of value to them, similar to fibers. And we don't fully understand their logic and how they work, but anybody who's taken chaga, a high quality chaga cup every day for a few months, have noticed significant health benefits. And I usually see them making a big life change for the better in the first few months of starting to take chaga. I can't prove that in any ways, but after 20 years of observing it, it seems to be the case. Last but not least, if you only know 1 mushroom and 1 mushroom alone, it should be Rishi. If chaga is the king of mushrooms, this is the queen of mushrooms. Rishi, Chanoderma lucidum, there's also a few varieties, Chanoderma chukai, Chanoderma oreganis, Chanoderma sinensis. It's the Chanoderma lucidum and the Chanoderma sinensis varieties that kind of are the most studied, and like with other mushrooms, let's say cordyceps, it's been named multiple times. This is the most studied of all the functional and medicinal mushrooms, up to the point that 2,000 years ago in Materia Medica, kind of in the Bible of traditional Chinese medicine 2,000 years ago, they listed all the best herbs in the world, and they listed Rishi as the #1 herb. It's not really an herb, but the point being is that its health benefits have been praised over a long time, and it's been elevated into this kind of Mount Rushmore of herbal medicine or fungal medicine for a long time. And it has just the most amount of research. It has very interesting studies about allergies, for example, on people who have even HIV. And these are things that you're not supposed to say. And without taking any comments about these more wild studies that have been done with the Rishi mushroom, I think what's more solid is its ability to not just, again, help with immunity and gut health, but with occasional stress. Particularly, its triterpenes found in Rishi mushrooms are very powerful to support our endocrine system, our HPA axis, our hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal gland axis. Actually, thyroid is also part of it. People don't talk about HPA-T, but those 4 things are really powerful messengers, slow-moving messengers on impacting how our hormones and how our stress response feels. And what the Rishi seems to be doing is really supporting with this occasional stress that we face from work or personal life. keeping us calmer and also helping us sleep better. So when should you take these? Now, if in doubt, I would just recommend taking a blend of all of them together in the morning in coffee or later in the day in a smoothie. That's totally fine. So when in doubt, just buy the index fund instead of try to stock pick. But if you could build a routine, a 2-step routine, I would probably have things like Choga and Lionsman and cordyceps more in the morning, and then I would take things like Rishi and turkey tail in the evening. If you want to build a 3-step system, Choga in the morning, Lionsman in the afternoon, Rishi in the evening. How much should you take? Now, I've taken very large dosages, and I've also taken long breaks from different mushrooms. And the good thing about mushrooms is that their effects do linger. So for example, if you stop taking cordyceps, start taking lion's mane, you'll probably still feel some of those effects for the next 2 to 4 weeks. But generally, I recommend taking some kind of a functional mushroom all the time, similarly as you probably want things like chlorophyll in your body or types of salts all the time, but you can vary the types of salts or vary the forms of where you get your chlorophyll. I generally recommend taking 500 to 1500 milligrams on a daily basis in some form or the other. That can be in a coffee, that could be in a coffee substitute, that can be in a smoothie or in a capsule. But in the case of like high stress or need for exercise or need for cognitive function, I do recommend trying taking 3,000 to 5,000, so 3 milligrams, so that's 3 to 5 grams of strong mushroom extracts per day of be cordyceps for exercise, lion's mane for cognitive function, or reishi for stress on shorter time periods. But generally, I recommend 500 to 1,500 milligrams, and that's pretty much aligned with the studies. Again, depends if you take a little bit of multiple, then you can probably be in the lower ranges, and if you take a very targeted, you probably want to be in the higher ranges. Things that I would also look out for with mushrooms is being certified organic. These mushrooms can accumulate and hyperaccumulate toxins, so purity is very important. Only buy products that are mushroom fruiting bodies, actual real mushrooms. According to FDA, these mycelium products are not mushrooms, so avoid products that mention mushroom or words like full spectrum. That is just basically indicating that they are not actual real mushrooms. And you want to take products that you have trust in their sourcing and quality, and that's another video for another time. If you're interested in general in supplements, you can check out my other video that I made about like the supplement space and how that also links with mushrooms. Hopefully this was helpful. As a summary, mushrooms are very complex. They're very unique. They offer very unique health benefits and also possible negative effects to us humans because of our DNA similarity. And in order to use their benefits for your health, you do not need to know a lot. You can start with the top 3 or top 5. If you go with the 5, incorporate turkey tail and cordyceps into your life. If you just want to do 3, it's reishi, chaga, and lion's mane. And I recommend taking them in coffee substitute, and smoothies in the beginning to get used to the bitter flavors. Later, you can enjoy them au naturel, all kind of in their purest form. And recommend taking 500 to 1,500 milligrams of organic mushroom fruiting body extracts. Well, thanks for joining for this video. If you watched all the way through, thank you. I know there's a lot of information. Hopefully you found it helpful. You can leave comments below on your experiences with mushroom or specific questions you have. I'll do my best to come back to them. See you in the next video.